Early Week podcast. We are back for week 4 of the NFL season. Week 2 of us doing this show together. So I'm with a couple of my good buddies. We're going to start out talking to Bobby Fi. Bobby, how did week 3 go for you?
What's up, JM? Week 3, it's really strange. When I look back, I had all of the right plays, yet somehow I was not profitable. So I need to do a little bit of reassessment. Some of my sure things didn't pay off the way I thought they would.
It was definitely a weird week. We were talking before the show, and I was telling you basically I had all the right plays in the early games and all the wrong plays in the late games. So early games, after early games, I had more minutes remaining than anyone and was cashing in all tournaments, and then ended up barely finishing in the top half of tournament fields with my main team after the late games.
That's fairly similar to what happened with me. I was all over the Indianapolis and San Diego game, and it didn't pay off the way that I hoped it would. I actually thought it was the more conservative game to go for, that and D'Angelo Williams. I will reassess next time and go back to my original Darren Sproles and Antonio Brown mix.
Yeah, so before we get to our third member of our crew, just real quick, that's one of those things too, I think, where it's important to, I talk about this a lot, but it is important to assess your roster independent of results, which is not always easy to do. But for example, I was on Phillip Rivers and I was on D'Angelo Williams and some other guys. And so the question you have to ask is, was that actually the wrong player? Or did it just not work out? I think there's a case to be made that D'Angelo Williams was the wrong play, even with the volume. But yeah, I mean, just that Eagles defense is probably better than we've given it credit for. But I do think that's important to say, just because something didn't work out doesn't mean it's the wrong play. Wouldn't you agree, Bobby?
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I actually don't think D'Angelo Williams was the wrong play, and I can go into a long list of reasons as to why, but I understand why, especially for GPs, I can see why he would be a guy, if you just didn't touch in general or anybody in that system, you're going to have a chance more often than you're not because everybody's going to be all over them.
Yeah. So our third member, we got some background noise. So for listeners, sorry, I don't know what that is. It might be our third member. He's kind of unpredictable, kicking chairs or something, who knows? But our third member is the great Grant Neefer. So Grant, I'm going to throw it over to you for our week 4 Grant's rant.
All right. I'm just going to rant about some things that I love that everyone else hates and I really, really do not understand. So let's start off. 1, listening to Nickelback for hours on end and dancing. 2, drinking champagne in the shower. 3, really tall women. 4, really short women. 5, wearing dress socks with no pants. 6, putting pictures of Dan DeVito all around my house so that I chuckle all day and don't have to do an ab workout. 7, burning the roof of my mouth from hot pizza because if anyone actually waits for pizza to cool down, they are very, very dumb. Whatever number I'm on, every Brendan Fraser movie ever. Heartburn, bubble baths, bath bombs, Fireball on the Rocks, rainbow striped gum so that I can put the little tattoos all over my body and chuckle at myself. And Ryan Fitzpatrick. I get that he threw 6 interceptions this week, but he still has an incredible beard. He still has an incredible receiving score around him. He went to Harvard, which is irrelevant here. I just thought I'd mention that he's smart so people hate him less. And even Brett Favre threw 6 touchdowns or 6 interceptions in a game. He's not that bad of a quarterback, and one game I have a feeling is going to have everyone think that he's the worst ever and believe that he's still what he was in Buffalo.
Bobby, do you have any rebuttals to the list or to Ryan Fitzpatrick?
There were so many things on that list that I could rebut. I want to say I think I agree with things 3 through 6, if I can remember correctly. I don't remember for sure exactly what they were, but I remember agreeing with them, especially the Danny DeVito part, and chuckling so hard that you don't have to do your ab exercise because ab exercises suck. But the Ryan Fitzpatrick, it's very interesting that you would bring him up on a week where he threw 6 picks. And what I actually like about that, I actually was expecting to just disagree with everything you say like I normally do in person, Grant. But this one time, Ryan Fitzpatrick is somebody looking forward is the perfect DFS quarterback he's not Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles can turn the ball over 5 times. He's still going to put up 20 points no matter what. It's just automatic. They're going to throw the ball 45 times. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Blake Bortles, those are guys looking I would look at going forward. And I love horrible performances out of players that I think have reasonably high expectations going forward because everybody stays off of them. And so from that part of your Grant rant, I guess I agree with it. Most of it I think is insanity, but it's all good.
You seem like
Grant,
a Nickelback fan.
Grant,
nobody likes Nickelback. You don't even like Nickelback. Nickelback doesn't like Nickelback.
I love them. They
don't like them. They don't like them.
$2 for a Nickelback concert.
Grant, they're embarrassed. We give them an excuse because they're Canadian.
Did you write out the list, or was that off the top of your head?
About everything was off the top of my head. There might have been the background noise. I started typing some of them down.
Because whatever number, like around number 3 or 4, I started to get on board with some of what you were saying.
So at least me and JM are in the same boat on that one.
Yeah, they were somewhere in that range where I was like, yeah, I'll agree with that one. Really short and really tall women. So any listeners who have not met me in person, my wife is 5'11".
His wife is beautiful and seems like a wonderful person. Like actually, it's uncomfortable to talk to her because she's prettier than any other DFS girls around. So it actually makes life like a little bit weird for the rest of us because we're like, we want to be friendly, but we don't want to be that friendly.
So Grant was.
Damn, did you make a deal with the devil?
Grant was very adamant. It's my beard. Grant was very adamant to my wife that she was too short for him because she was not over 6 feet. He basically told her, you have to be over 6 feet or like under 5 feet for me to be interested. So I want
someone that I can rest my head on or that can rest their head on me.
You want midgets and giants. I know we're going to get to DFS at some point, but I'm loving this. Midgets and giants.
Midgets and giants.
So I agreed on the tall women. I'm like 6'2", I think. So I kind of liked short women back in the day too. So I guess I'm with you on those.
Just women
as
in
for
general.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, yeah, I guess so. As for Ryan Fitzpatrick, so he's playing Seattle this week, and it's at home. But are you going to wait for another bad performance this week, or do you think you'll throw him in some of your tournament teams? I know it's early in the week. That's obviously the point of this podcast, is just get our early week takes. But early week, Grant, would you say you'd throw him in against the Seahawks a little bit, with the Seahawks being on the road and nobody on Fitzpatrick, or do you think you'll wait and hope for one more bad performance?
The bigger the tournament field, the more exposure I'm going to have to him.
Yeah,
I'm going to throw him in at least if I only play 10. Because it's against Seattle, it's going to be garbage time because they're going to get out way ahead. And it also depends a little bit on if Wilson plays. If he doesn't, then that kind of causes some problems.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Any defense.
Because game flow is obviously, it's less likely to get out of hand. And I think right now the Seahawks are only favored by like 3 points or something. But game flow is obviously less likely to get out of hand if Russell Wilson is out or even limited. I mean, that offensive line of the Seahawks is so bad that a lot of what they're able to do on offense is mask the offensive line by Russell Wilson's mobility. So that could definitely make a difference. But another thing to think about if you watch Jets games is they run a very different offense than teams are used to seeing these days with Chan Gailey's spread attack. So you can't just say the Seahawks have a good defense, so they'll shut them down. I definitely think the Jets could put up some points against that Seahawks defense playing at home. And as you said, Grant, the bigger the tournament field, the more exposure you'll have. That's the sort of play that you're not going to play in a 1K buy-in with 100 people in the field, but maybe with a $20 buy-in or even depending on bankroll, a $50 buy-in and a massive field, you might be likely to take that shot. So any other thoughts, Bobby, before we get started on our trend or trap segment?
Just one thought on that game. I'll stay away from that game almost entirely, but I do think that there's a good point to be made for large tournament fields, game flow situation. If Russell Wilson was healthy if the Seahawks were undefeated. It's a little bit of a different situation. I really believe in the Jets offense. I believe in Fitzpatrick. It's just, if you could pick a horrible matchup, this is it. But going forward, that is something you should look to exploit, even against the Cincinnati's, of the world, all their in-division rivals. They have a really, really, really strong offense, and it's almost all gonna be the passing game. I think it's important to look at going forward. I would not touch it this week, except for maybe in large GPPs.
So, trend or trap, for any who missed the podcast last week, we're going to pull out 5 things that stood out from the previous week and talk about whether we're buying or selling those, essentially talk about whether we think those are trends we can expect to continue or if those are traps. So last week we actually got some, or I guess Bobby and Grant got some pushback for saying that the Giants defense is not good. I disagreed with you guys. A lot of people on Twitter disagreed, but for what it's worth, the Giants defense did not have a great game on Sunday. So obviously one good game against the Saints did not mean they are good, and one bad game this last week did not mean they are bad, but it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out throughout the season. They also have they've lost Eli Apple and who else? They lost 2 cornerbacks and a safety this last week, so that'll hurt them as well moving forward. But yeah, so this week we're going to get to some more, maybe have some hot takes according to listeners and see where this goes. So first one we want to talk about, and Bobby, I'm going to throw this to you first because you and I touched on this a little bit pre-show and you seem to have some thoughts on it. And that is LeSean McCoy's big game. Now, we all know Arizona supposedly has a really good run defense. Anybody who's watched that game, so far I've only been able to watch in full since games ended yesterday, been able to watch 2 or 3 games from this last weekend in full. But watching that one, they were just gaping holes for LeSean McCoy, which is partially – what is going on?
Frank, what are you doing over there? What are you doing, man?
What? That was my refrigerator.
Okay.
All right, well then stay away from your refrigerator.
Your refrigerator talks? You have a talking refrigerator?
Well, I don't pay for air conditioning, so I leave the refrigerator open.
Hey, this is live sports radio, kind of. Like, come on, man.
Another thing Grant likes that other people hate are talking refrigerators. So that game, the Bills' offensive line manhandled the Cardinals' defensive line. There were gaping holes. LeSean McCoy looked awesome. So the question is, was that a one-game outburst, Bobby, or can we expect LeSean McCoy to be more usable moving forward than he was the first couple of weeks?
The first thing, I went to play baseball Sunday morning at 10 a.m. when lineups locked, and I told my brother, who is probably like the best DFS player that doesn't play much DFS. He's one of those guys who comes in the top 20 of like the Millionaire Maker, and he's happy he made 20,000, but because he only entered 5 times, and he entered $100 worth of tournaments. That's how good he is. And I said, the best plays of today are LeSean McCoy and Darren Sproles, right? And he thought for a second. He goes, I didn't use them in any lineups. He's like, that's the smartest thing you've ever said to me. He never gives me any respect. LeSean McCoy is the best play every week for one simple reason. It's usage. That team doesn't have a lot to run their offense through. In blowout wins, in tight games, it's all going to be featured LeSean McCoy unless there's some sort of injury or something amazing happens that's totally we haven't seen any sign of. His usage is higher than anybody else except for D'Angelo Williams, with the exception of this week, because they were playing from behind. But I think actually now after this week, he might actually have the highest usage rate in the NFL. That usage rate is the most important thing. LeSean McCoy is an awesome running back. He's one of the 5 best running backs in the NFL. He can escape. He can break free. He just hasn't played in the right style offense over the last few years. He's still a top 5 running back. He should be treated as such especially for DFS purposes, especially in GPPs where he's always going to remain underowned.
So before I throw it to Grant, I'm gonna ask you something. And this is just because on the Friday night round table, Adam Levitan and I, in weeks 1 and 2, talked about LeSean McCoy as someone we really liked because of his usage. And Adam went back to him this last Friday night. I did not. But the the reason why I kind of started getting off of him was this narrative that he's the only running back and he gets all this usage. But I'm gonna read this to you and then get your response on it, Bobby, and then we'll go over to Grant. So week 1, LeSean McCoy had 16 carries and 4 targets. Week 2, he had 15 carries and 5 targets. Week 3, when he had this big game, he had 17 carries and 4 targets. I mean,
you're talking about strict numbers versus game flow and situation. I mean, imagine if this game was a nail biter back and forth. How many targets would he have had? It would have been 11. It would have been 12. This happened to be a blowout, and he still put up what did he put up on DraftKings? 27, 28 fantasy points?
29.6.
29.6 on DraftKings. And this was a blowout. And yes, there were gaping holes. I was a little bit surprised to see why those holes were so open. I don't entirely understand it because I do believe in the Arizona D. But I really think there's something to that massive usage rate and an incredible shifty back that can find holes anywhere. And he's going to find those holes.
So, Grant, I'm going to throw this over to you. What's your take, trend or trap on LeSean McCoy?
Every single week this season, I've suggested McCoy because every single week this season, no one's been on him and no one said that he's any good. This happened to be the first week where I didn't play him that much, but I mean, Bobby's right. He's going to get a lot of usage, but most of all, like his numbers are not that bad and they have not been that bad. Last year he was injured, and last year when he was injured and out, everyone else who played in there was a top target in DFS. Their offense is in a little flux right now because Watkins is out. But yeah, he's going to be one of the top running backs the rest of the season, and he still is only, 28?
Yeah,
really
my personal feeling, which is funny because I'm not a cash game player, and Grant, I'm actually curious of your thoughts on this, but I feel like LeSean McCoy is the best cash game play every week. And I feel like it's bizarre because I'm playing him in tournaments because he's low owned. I feel like his upside is extremely high because of his usage rate, but maybe it's not. It's also his floor is so high because of his usage rate. I actually feel like he's almost a better cash game play than he is a tournament play.
No. For one reason, his price.
You're just going based on ownership.
No, yeah, it's just based on ownership that he's a good play because he was 1.3% owned this week.
But doesn't that make him? Why can't he be an awesome cash game play at 2% owned if you have that usage and your floor is that high? I mean, his floor is that high. He's not going to have a game where he has less than 12 fantasy points.
I just disagree. There are guys that I would much rather go with who I think their floor is much, much higher. Because the problem is Buffalo. I'm still not sure if
I would love to know whose floor is higher. I feel like there's 3 guys I can think of.
Lamar Miller.
I think
Lamar
lower.
Miller, DeMarco Murray right now.
DeMarco Murray, yes. Lamar Miller, lower.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Ezekiel Elliott, floor lower. Ceiling.
I'd go lower on Elliott just because of
D'Angelo Williams.
Lack of pass game
last week.
Well, he's gone now.
But Le'Veon Bell. I mean, Le'Veon Bell's 7,500 this week on DraftKings. LeSean McCoy 6,700. It's not a huge gap in price
because he got jumped up a little bit. But there are a lot of sites and DraftKings. I think that they actually have the best algorithm for pricing, but there's a reason. LeSean McCoy, especially in a PPR format, I mean, he's an awesome play every week. He's never a bad play. That's my main thing with him. That's why I feel like
I'll agree with that. And I think the one of the big keys that we all agree on with LeSean McCoy is he's always an excellent tournament play because usage is there, upside is there. He is one of the few game flow independent backs, as in he will get pass game work if the team is behind in a game, and will get rushing work if the team is ahead. And because he's always low owned and has high upside, he's always a strong tournament play. I'm kind of in the middle on cash. I mean, I think he's usable. I think there's a few guys I'd rather use more than him, matchup, depending on matchup and week. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think McCoy is more trend than trap. And if you look at his games, I mean, his worst game this year is still 12 points. He's had 3 tough matchups to start the season. So I think we're going to see a lot more good from McCoy moving forward than bad.
And by the way, that 12 points was with a healthy Gillespie and a healthy offensive line. It actually feeds more into McCoy going forward. But I love everything you said. Just wanted to throw that in there.
All right. So next one we were going to talk about, and Grant, I'm going to throw this to you first. And that is, and actually I have a little story to go along with this, but this is the Broncos passing game of whether it's a trend or a trap. And my story is I was messing around with rosters throughout the week, and I was kind of behind because of all my MLB content. But I kept ending up on teams on DraftKings that had exactly 6K left in the wide receiver or flex spot. And each time that happened, I would see Emmanuel Sanders right there at 6K, and I'd think, that's an interesting play. I ended up going Marvin, like things moved around. I went Marvin Jones at 6,200, so it wasn't like a loss or anything. But obviously, I didn't truly consider pulling the trigger on Emmanuel Sanders as the refrigerator talks some more.
That is not my refrigerator.
I didn't consider pulling the trigger on Emmanuel Sanders, but it was pretty interesting that he kept kind of popping up like that, and then to see him get over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Grant, Broncos pass game, trend or trap moving forward?
I'm going to say something about Trevor Siemian that many women have said to me or said about me, and I'm not touching him. Someone else might want to, but I surely don't.
So if women said this to you about you or about Trevor Siemian?
No, probably both. I don't think he's that good looking of a guy.
You don't have to rub it in, JM. He was talking about himself. You don't have to like push it even further. I'm just kidding.
I'm trying to find out.
No, I'm just messing with you, bro.
Simmons is not a terrible quarterback, but he's not one that's going to blow you away. I think this was a fluke this week. I mean, he's got great wide receivers, but I don't generally like to play quarterbacks that much who have a great defense. Like, there are exceptions, obviously, but I don't like quarterbacks that generally have a great defense.
Yeah.
I think most of the games, if he's playing well, chances are Denver's not going to do too much. You can play Sanders and Thomas. Like, the targets are going to be there. The receptions are going to be there. I don't know how high of a ceiling they really have in most weeks, but their floor is actually pretty high. Siemian, I'm staying away from entirely, and there's no one else I'd touch in that offense besides Thomas and Sanders and C.J. Anderson on some weeks.
Real quick before throwing it over to Bobby, I think that's important to think about is, I mean, obviously people who read my NFL Edge know that game flow is a huge thing that I focus on, and how coaches are going to call a game and what's likely to happen. But typically you're not going to see a 300-yard, 3 or 4 touchdown game from a quarterback with an awesome defense, because he doesn't need to do that.
Especially against a pretty decent defense, even though their numbers don't show it right now.
Yeah. So, Bobby, then, trend or trap on the Broncos passing offense?
I really like what Grant said. It's funny. I expect to disagree with him every time. Every single time. Because I actually disagree with like almost his first sentence, almost every single thing he says. But I think that I would not trust the passing game. I would definitely would never take Trevor Siemian. I don't think he's not necessarily for real. I just don't think that if he is, he's not going to win me a massive GPP. The guys who I'm more interested in, I do think that you could make an argument for Demaryius every week, more so than Sanders, just because of his size, his ability to catch balls in the red zone. Sanders has to break free for a couple for it to really work out, and he had a huge game this week. But in general, if I was going to focus on their passing game at all, I would focus on Thomas alone. And again, with that defense, they don't need to pass the ball that well. C.J. Anderson is still the best play on that team most weeks. Let's not forget that. He had 1 week where it was down because they threw the ball like crazy. But let's not get crazy. C.J. Anderson and the Broncos D is a great way for cash games going forward, also for tournaments, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I'll close this one out before we move on to our third one. But so my take on it, and I haven't watched the game yet, but my assumption is that the Bengals basically dared the
exactly what happened.
Basically dared sorry, I got distracted by this noise. That the Bengals basically dared the Broncos to pass. On top of that, there was some squeaky wheel stuff going on with Emmanuel Sanders talking about his role in the offense. That won't be the last time that a team dares the Broncos to pass. But I think I got to watch, maybe 10 minutes from that game, and Siemian was, kind of erratic, his typically erratic self. I think that the Broncos want to win a Super Bowl, obviously, and Gary Kubiak is a good coach. If he has an opportunity to boost Siemian's confidence a little bit along the way, he's going to take it. But yeah, I don't think they're going to open things up. This next week is an interesting situation against the Buccaneers, who do have a really good run defense.
Not a good pass.
And generally, their good run defenses, a lot of it is from stacking the box, although that's less so now that Mike Smith is the defensive coordinator. But so we could see a little bit more from this passing game again, but long term, I definitely think it's more trap than trend. I think we all kind of agree there that they're not intentionally opening up the offense. This isn't something we're going to see every week. So the third one we're going to talk about here, and Bobby, I'll go to you first on this one, is Julio Jones. So thankfully, I did not play any slates that included the Monday night game. I say thankfully because I'm sure I would have used Julio against the Saints. Julio had now this is last
one
year.
catch
There were
for 16 yards, right?
There were one catch for 16 yards. There were 2 games in 2015, 2, in which Julio had single-digit targets. There are 3 games this year in which he has single-digit targets. And last week, Kyle Shanahan said something to the effect of, "We're not just going to force the ball to Julio." So my question: the Falcons are what, 2-1 or 3-0? What are they? Basically,
right now,
they're winning, and
right now they're 2-1, but they are a terrible 2-1, to be honest. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah,
I didn't really get to the question. Go ahead.
They're winning. So what impetus do they have to change what they're doing? Are we going to suddenly see Julio start getting 17 targets again, which I believe there were 4 games last year in which he had 17 targets? Or is this more a trend of what we're going to see moving forward with Julio getting lower usage?
Yes to the first part. You will see those 17 target type of games. They will be maybe fewer. Maybe there'll be 2 this year instead of 4. There will be. My guess is I think he'll have 3 over 15 target games this year. It's going to depend on how healthy he is, though. And the truth is, if you watch him run, he doesn't look the same. And I really do base a lot of this game on what I see instead of all the numbers we read and all the numbers we research and everything we do. You can tell when someone is not themselves. And I feel like Sanu is a great play until then. I feel like in a few weeks there will be a time.
Sanu left early tonight. Did he get back on the field after he left?
I actually don't know if he did. I missed the end of that game.
Okay.
I missed the second half of the game entirely. But I mean, actually,
and that was even more weird. Yeah, it looks like he didn't come back, which is even more weird.
He didn't. But that's
Julio
really
continued
why
to do nothing. But
exactly. Well, I mean, they had a big lead, and you can see exactly what happened with the rushing game. I mean, I played the Monday, Thursday tournaments, and I was very into both of the running backs, Coleman and Freeman, just because I felt like the opportunities would be there. But anyway, I feel like Julio Jones is the best wide receiver to take for GPPs in general. I don't feel like that's going to change. And going forward, there's no reason that it should change except for his health. I can give endless loads of statistics, but the main reason is Odell Beckham is probably the best receiver in the NFL, along with Antonio Brown. I'll give them 1 and 1A. Julio Jones is the guy who actually will make a difference in your daily fantasy rosters. There are a lot of other weapons on both of those other teams. There's not a lot of other weapons in Atlanta, and they're competitive enough to where they're going to have to rely on him going forward. So yes, he is a trend going forward. I feel like this is an awesome thing that this happened if you're a Julio Jones lover, and if he's on your regular year-long fantasy sports team, he is a great play going forward as long as he's healthy. I just want to make sure how healthy he is. My ideal thing is look for him in 2 to 3 weeks. I'll leave it there.
All right, Grant, what do you think on Julio Jones?
I think the only trap here is the bear trap he probably stepped on that injured him. He is not healthy right now. Or I'm pretty, at least what it seems like, is not healthy enough right now. And as soon as that changed, be just a monster. And I mean, we saw it last year. People are making way too many assumptions 3 weeks in, like they do every single year. He's too good of a wide receiver. The only thing that kind of worries it about me is the fact that they're throwing the ball a lot to the guys in the backfield on the other side, and Tammy's actually turning into a decent weapon. So I mean, yeah, that'll probably open things up for him. But I don't see any difference between him this year and last year. And great wide receivers, especially at his age, don't tend to deteriorate this quickly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
So there's no way.
to add just one thing to Grant's point is that he was talking about the running backs and catching the ball out of the backfield, which is really true about them. And another thing is that we still don't know about their defense. If their defense is as bad as I think it is, Julio Jones is the greatest play moving forward in daily fantasy sports, especially because of nights like tonight. But if it is a decent defense that can be relied upon, he is not a great play because there are weapons on that team. They can find their holes.
Yeah,
But if they're
especially
gonna get the shootouts-
if it's a close game or if they're ahead,
Yeah.
they have ways to go shorter and safer than
Exactly.
Julio. Okay, so we're gonna speed through these last two before we move on to our last two sections. Grant, I'm gonna go to you on this one, and this is Theo Riddick was the de facto lead back of the Lions this last week. He had 10 carries for 9 yards. His long run was 8 yards, which means his other 9 carries went for 1 yard. Meanwhile, Dwayne Washington had 10 carries for 38 yards. So moving forward, do you think we'll keep seeing Theo Riddick get carries, or do you think that we'll see a shift to Washington being the bell cow and Riddick going back to being primarily the pass-catching back?
I mean, he doesn't look good running, but I don't think he's as bad as a runner as especially this game made it seem. They're going to keep him in the offense because their defense is so bad that they're going to need to be throwing most of the time. One they run with, but he's got 19 targets on the season, and 5 of which are in the red zone. Every single play I watched this weekend, which I went back and forth on it, he was involved in every single one. I didn't see one Marvin Jones catch by sheer, I don't know how it's possible. But every single play I saw, he was involved in it. He looked terrible, but I don't see him changing into some terrible, terrible running back. I think it's absolutely a trend that he will do well the rest of the season. He'll be more like he was week 1. And I think that'll be, especially with his price right now, if you don't worry about ownership, he's a good play, and he'll continue to be a good play.
And he still got pass game work this last week, which is obviously the main thing that we rely on him for. He had how many targets? 9 targets this last week. So obviously that's a huge thing in PPR, and anything he gets rushing is bonus. So Bobby, I'm going to throw it over to you, but with a little bit of a twist as well. Do you think that he and Dwayne Washington could both be a trend, or do you think that Riddick is still the guy you want to rely on?
I could care less about Dwayne Washington. I hate Detroit's defense. I love their offensive capability, especially without one giant main big threat receiver. Excuse me, Marvin Jones, for your 200-yard receiving game. You're not Calvin Johnson. It's not the same thing. Theo Riddick is going to be one of the best plays on PPR sites all year long. This game proved it to me more than anything. Those 9 targets, he had 9. I don't care if he has 9 carries for negative 30 yards. I don't care about his carries. I'm interested in his overall output, especially considering the fact that every major DFS site is either half-point PPR, full-point PPR, or they're honestly not a major DFS site. I care about winning major GPPs. Theo Riddick is the exact kind of running back, and this week I was very happy about one decision I made, and that was as long as Theo Riddick's under 5,000, play him every week. That's my personal opinion on PPR sites.
Right, and then
Darren Sproles, though, was the only exception I had this week. Was I thought that his upside was higher, and that was the one thing I did is I countered instead of Theo Riddick, I used Darren Sproles and one of the big time running backs, in most of my lineups. But that's the kind of spot you want to look for if you want to win large GPPs, especially on full PPR sites like DraftKings. Just want to make that one point clear.
So the last one to talk about here, and I'm guessing the show is going to end up at an hour again, even though, last week we were like an hour and 5, even though we want to keep it to 50 minutes optimally, but we're, I think, pushing 50 minutes already. Maybe we're pushing 35 minutes. So anyhow, but this last one, and then we'll move on to Love at First Sight, where we'll look at each of our favorite games heading into this next week. But the last one for Trend or Trap, and Grant, I'm going to start with you again. And that is Terrell Pryor. He's playing the Redskins this next week. Cody Kessler will be the starting quarterback again. Pryor is only 4.3K on DraftKings. So is he a trend, the usage we saw this last week, or a trap?
This is probably the biggest trend we've ever seen in DFS sports until week 5. And then it's just completely out the window. And then week 8, he's going to be entirely irrelevant because McCown will be back, Gordon will be back, and Coleman will be back, and then he's just worthless. So, yeah, this week he's going to do incredible. He's going to do some crazy things all over the offensive field, and then he's irrelevant. So I'm saying trend for 1 week and just the biggest bear trap in the world after that.
All right, Bobby, what do you think on Terrell Pryor?
Until anybody else other than McCown is starting a quarterback, other than Kessler is starting a quarterback, it's the easiest play in the books. Just play him. You can play him in cash games. He's still an even better tournament play, in my opinion. People are still going to fade him. He's going to throw the ball 10 times next week. He threw it 5 times this last week. That's because they were coming from behind, and because he was too effective out of the backfield and catching the ball. He is the entire focal point of that offense. It's like watching like a Tebow on steroids just take over a game.
They have Corey Coleman broke his hand. Josh Gordon is still suspended,
along with Cody 2 quarterback injuries.
Yeah, Cody Kessler is their quarterback. I'm going to go with trend here as well for at least week 4. We'll have to reassess when Josh Gordon comes back and see what we all think. But especially
one thing. Yeah, if you're going to play DFS tournaments and you have a quarterback who's that wide receiver, a guy who's going to line up at quarterback for 20% of the snaps, play him. Just every week, play him.
Yeah.
Why?
And we talked about.
I heard this about Edelman. It's not that great.
But first of all, Edelman didn't do that, and he's not going to throw the ball. Pryor actually can throw the ball. It's a different thing. He never got moved out of his job at Ohio State. He got moved out because they have guys who are NFL quarterbacks at that school. They had the second string kid would have been the Heisman winner if he played all year long. The third string kid was their best quarterback. I mean, he is the entire focal point of their offense right now. There's no reason why someone who's getting 70% of the touches on an offense could be. What is he this week? He was 3,700 last week. I think this week he's 4,300. Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, it doesn't even matter who it's against. It's just play all day and everything.
In PPR leagues, quarterbacks don't get more points than wide receivers, at least for a ceiling on most weeks.
Yeah, but he's not just
a quarterback. He's not just a quarterback.
Grant, you just said he's like the biggest trend ever this next week. Are you just playing devil's advocate because you and Bobby are used to disagree?
Oh, no. Well, there's no one else to throw to in the office as soon as Josh Gordon comes back. It's the quarterback play that I think is entirely irrelevant.
I mean, I think it helps. It just gets the ball in his hands a little bit more. If he's going to get 10 targets and be the quarterback part of the time, then that's just a bonus. It
raises his floor. It doesn't raise his ceiling as well.
Nobody else to throw to. Gary Barnidge. Come on, Mr. Gary Barnidge fan. What are you talking about?
My favorite player in the NFL.
I know.
Antonio Brown and 15 other people.
I know.
Remember that game? Remember that game when it was like week 1 or 2 when Jimmy Garoppolo threw a pass and it got batted in the air and then he caught it?
Yeah.
Maybe Pryor can get some of those and just get some extra PPR points that way as well.
I'm telling you, by the way, at 4,300, I just want to make one thing really clear. It's not out of the question he would be the highest scoring player next week. I'm not saying he will be. It's just completely possible. So if he's going to be 15% or less owned, own him in 75% of everything you play in. Period.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our last 2 sections, and we'll try to run through them somewhat quickly. That's Love at First Sight. We're going to talk about each of us are going to have the game that stands out to us early in the week, and then Money Matters, where we're just going to look at some of the cheaper options that are standing out to us just early on. And then we're going to close with a special segment for you guys that I am not quite prepared for. So, Love at First Sight. I'm going to kick it over to Grant. Grant, give us your weekly Love at First Sight story and your game.
So I actually fell in love this weekend. I found the love of my life. I was out at a bar, and we just danced the night away. We're dancing and dancing and dancing, And then at the end of the night, I can't remember what I said to her because my memory is terrible, but she's like, "Oh, I'm married." And I, of course, respond with, I feel like I should have been told. And then she raised her hand up and shows me the ring, and it's like, I'm pretty sure there's a gay bar at night. And then I looked around and thought about the last 2 hours and realized, oh, I think she's right. So how this relates to football is that things are not always what they seem. You get focused on one little thing and you disregard all your surroundings. So my favorite game of the week is Chicago and Detroit. And people, I didn't watch the game last night, but from what I did watch of it, it seemed like Chicago was not doing great. If you focus just on the 6 guys close to the ball, Chicago's not got a very good team. But if you focus on everyone else, and I know everyone else hates Jeremy Langford, but I think they have the potential to put up a huge amount of points. And going up against a Detroit defense that is just atrocious, even though Aaron Rodgers can't beat them in the second half, they are going to have just huge numbers. I want everyone's in play for me. Jeffrey's in play for me. White's in play for me. Langford's in play for me. Even Hoyer or Cutler, whoever starts for me, because they're going to be throwing the ball all over the place. It's going to be a high-up tempo game, and Kevin White, Jeffrey are all getting huge amount. Well, Jeffrey was injured this week, but White got a huge amount of targets this week. I think he had like
14 targets, yeah. And good news for you on that.
Is Jeffrey playing, by the way?
I mean, I haven't seen anything that says he won't be, but Langford is likely to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So that gives you Jordan Howard at a low price as well. So something else to love in that game.
So I'm not touching the running backs. But and then also, obviously, on the Detroit side, if you're playing on any double QB sites, which I think is just fantasy aces, just stack this game like crazy. Stack it
Why
as
aren't
much
they
as you
all? I wish we could just have I'm sorry, I know I trust to be cut short, but I just wish they were all double QB sites, double everything sites. Give us some flexibility. Don't just fucking constrict us and tell us we have to do exactly what FanDuel says we have to do. Sorry.
Doubles
I love
is always
FanDuel.
better.
I love DraftKings, but I love having options.
All
Is that
right.
too much to say? Sorry.
No,
No.
I think there might have been an F word in there that hopefully we can bleep out.
Oh my God, Grant!
Oh,
What did you do?
oops.
I'm sorry. I'm just.
Was it me?
It was me.
No, it was
just kidding.
Bobby on the. Actually, we had one in week 1 and in week 2 on the round table from Adam. So our Roto Grinders producers are used to it by now. So we.
I am a perfect gentleman. I always use the fudge word.
I think actually PG-13 movies I can't have one in there. So
Really?
we have.
Unless I fudge it.
Is that really the cutoff?
Yeah, I've never seen.
Yep.
I've seen plenty of PG-13 movies with 1 and never with 2. So I think it's just kind of generally understood. So it's okay for a 13-year-old without parental guidance to hear it once, but not to hear it twice.
I actually
That
agree
crosses
with everything you said, except for that I don't think it's generally understood. I didn't understand it. Most people I know, I
mean,
understand that.
Generally understood by the MPAA or whatever does the.
Yeah, exactly. The people
like, okay.
that control it. Yeah.
They're like, yeah, this is okay.
I think you're thinking of the NAACP.
No, not the NAACP.
Nope.
different.
NCAA?
I think we need to finish our show.
Don't do the ratings.
Yeah, sorry.
So Bobby, I'm gonna throw it to you for your love at first sight game.
There's a lot of really good options. Actually, Grant's really good at selling me on his options. Although unfortunately last week he sold me on Fitzpatrick. So 6
Yeah, fudge the pooch.
INTs, buddy. I'm always in love with every Pittsburgh game. I think it's always, especially this will be a sleeper week because KC has a decent defense. It's more of a spot where I see a pass catching back out of the backfield. I could see a sleeper GPP play being West even. I don't know where Jamal Charles and where are going to be at. I thought that was a very interesting spot. But the game I'm most excited about, the game I will have all my money on, or as much as I can, will be Mark Ingram and the New Orleans Saints at the Chargers. I love the Chargers passing game, and I actually really oddly think Mark Ingram might be the best running back play of the week, especially for GPPs. His ownership will be low. His upside is through any roof that exists. San Diego, they're cheap. You know who they're going to be. It's simple. It's Williams. It's Benjamin. It's Rivers. It's Gordon. Every single option is a good option. It's a game where I feel like it's going to go way over the over, which I think is right now at 49.5, 50. I think it's going to be a game well into the 50s, 60s. 52. It's going to be the highest scoring game of the weekend.
So a couple thoughts on that before I give my game, and that's just real quickly. There's a misconception that the Chargers have a bad pass defense. Actually, the Chargers have a good pass defense, which funnels things to the run.
I say that's a misconception because their run defense is so bad. It covers up for how bad their pass defense is. If you can run the ball, last year, all year long, everybody just ran the ball on them all year long. And there was no reason to throw the ball, especially when they were playing from 2 touchdowns behind. So
I'll disagree vehemently because I do think Jason Verrett's one of the top 3 corners in football. I think Casey Hayward, who they picked up from the Packers this offseason, is one of the top 3 slot corners in football. And I think Brandon Flowers looks really good this year. I mean, he was great 2 years ago. He had an awful season last year. So I have a lot of respect for their secondary. But whether you do or not,
I agree about the first 2. I don't agree about Brandon Flowers, but I do agree about the first 2.
That still leans things toward Ingram getting more work than people will expect. As far as people just think, high scoring game, target the pass catchers on the Saints. But there's definitely a viable case to be made for things funneling toward Ingram here. And then on the other side, you mentioned Benjamin and Tyrell Williams. An interesting thing about that is, 2 weeks ago they both had 6 targets. But because Benjamin had the huge game, everybody went to him. And, I talked to a few people, we might have even touched on it last week, that Williams was just as good of a play going into this last game. And, sure enough, he got 9 targets. Benjamin got 6. So it's important to not just read too much into stats, but also how the stats came about. So I like all those plays. My game, and I'll just run through it real quickly, is Kansas City at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a very different team at home. Kansas City is a very different defense on the road. And Antonio Brown could be a little bit under-owned this week. I say that, I said that last week. He was still over 40%. So who knows? Le'Veon Bell, people might be concerned about him coming back from suspension. I believe I saw a tweet today from Adam Levitan that said Le'Veon Bell played something like 96% of the snaps his first game off suspension last year. So I think it's a spot that is not the highest upside spot on the board, but definitely a high upside spot that will go overlooked because of what the Chiefs defense did last week, because of what the Steelers offense did last week. And so I think that's an interesting spot to look to as well. So we're going to move on to our last segment, and we've actually done pretty good this week. Real quick before I forget, for listeners, drop any of us a line on Twitter. Let us know what you like about the show, what you'd like to see changed. We got some cool suggestions this last week. We're incorporating at least one of them or a form of one of them. And we want your feedback because, we're trying to keep the show around, but we also want it to be something you guys really look forward to. So more sound effects in the background, more stories, fewer stories, whatever. Let us know. So last section we want to get to is Money Matters, and I'm going to just run through some of the low-priced guys I'm seeing, and if you guys have anybody else that has stood out to you at each position, let me know. So I'm going to start with quarterback. I'll give my list, and then Bobby, I'll throw it over to you. I don't know that I'll actually be on any of these guys, but these are the viable options under 6K that I noticed. One is Trevor Siemian, who I think all of us have agreed we're not on, or as Grant said, not touching him. One is Tyrod Taylor, who is a bit interesting. He had one great game against the Patriots last year and one awful game. Tyrod Taylor's 5.4K on DraftKings. Dak Prescott in an up-tempo game at San Francisco. My only concern there is San Francisco is typically a better defense at home. It's a different coaching staff this year, but last year they were allowed 15 points per game at home and 29 on the road. Something absurd like that.
Great point.
And Brock Osweiler against Tennessee at home. Funnel defense. Tennessee stacks the box. Tennessee slows down the run. Tennessee has Parrish Cox and Jason McCourty on the outside. I don't know that I'll actually go to Brock, but I'll definitely give a strong look to Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins, and I think Brock is in play. So, Bobby, what are you seeing at the quarterback position? Anything I overlooked?
You went through the cheap guys the same way that I would. I agree with everything you said. I think that it's a really good week to spend up at quarterback. I don't like it. I feel like treating quarterbacks like treating is like treating pitchers a little bit in daily fantasy baseball, but it's not exactly the same thing. I do prefer to go for the sure things. I think Cam Newton is as sure a thing this week to have a massive week as anything else.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody paired with him. I don't want anything. I think he might scramble for 2. Playing indoors on that turf in Atlanta, I just love Cam Newton. So I'm going to go spend my money up at quarterback this week. As far as the cheap guys are concerned, I don't think that there's anybody that I'm really on that you didn't mention. But again, it's a position I'm choosing to pay up on. If I'm not using Cam, I think Drew Brees is in a great spot. I think Phillip Rivers is in a great spot. Those are my favorite quarterbacks of the week.
All right, Grant, what about you? Anything I missed on that list of cheaper quarterbacks?
Did you say Dak, Jameis, or Hoyer?
I said Dak. I did not say Jameis or Hoyer, although right now it looks like Cutler may be back in.
Yeah, well, Cutler's 300 more, so either way.
Yeah, either way.
So, yeah, either Cutler or Hoyer, whoever starts. Again, this is the Detroit defense, and these are 2 quarterbacks that most people think of me. And Winston is going up against Denver, which no one's going to want to touch him against Denver.
Yeah.
And especially if Denver's passing attack is good and they have to come from behind like they did this last week, he's going to go off, and pairing him with Evans is just a hugely profitable move. So, yeah, I like those 2 guys a lot, and then everything else you said. I agree with Bobby mostly.
Can I throw one thing, though, with the Jameis point? Actually, that's a genius tournament play. You're getting somebody at less than 3% owned who very likely will be the highest point producer of the week or has a great shot at it. When great defenses collide with great individual players, and Jameis Winston is a great individual player, especially one that can scramble and score a couple touchdowns, sort of like Cam, but not in the same level. It's a great defense that's forcing you to do things that are a little bit outside your comfort zone. You're scrambling more. There's a lot of loose, broken plays. That suits Jameis better. He's a really interesting GPP play this week. I didn't think about him before, but Grant made a really good point.
So one thing I'll say on that is I think it was Chris Raybon did a study on basically floor versus ceiling, uncovering the idea, or I guess you could say the fact that players in really tough matchups, their ceiling is not actually compromised. What is compromised is their floor. So, Jameis playing against the Broncos obviously makes him a much riskier play. His floor is going to be far lower than normal. But according to that line of thinking, his ceiling is still the same. It's a bit like the, last year when Jeff Collins famously won 2 qualifiers using Charkandrick West against the Broncos defense. Right. The thinking is nobody's going to be on him, and his ceiling is still the same. So I'll take the lower floor because it's all or nothing.
But you really don't think his floor is? I actually kind of disagree. Now that I look at his price at 5,400, like his floor is high. It's just it's a misprice. It really is.
I'll never say any quarterback's floor is high against the Broncos.
It doesn't. I think the Broncos have an amazing defense. I think it's exactly the kind of defense that Jameis Winston will pick apart. It's not that he's going to have a great game. If they weren't playing at home, I'm just saying, like that's a cash game play almost for me. Like I'm looking at it right now. I really better play than people think that it is. Sorry, I bet
it's early in the week. Look at 2 weeks ago. Look at 2 weeks ago against the Cardinals. That's what his floor is, but probably worse because he's going against a better defense. That's all.
Yeah, we're gonna get some pushback from that one.
Fine. Yeah, I'm happy with it. Hey, I'm happy to argue with it. I was also the guy who argued that LaShawn McCoy was a great play last week. So
yeah,
whatever.
That's
Darren Sproles. So
all right, I know what your bold call is going to be at the end of the show. You got to stick with the Jameis call.
Oh, I didn't want to, but I just got turned on to it by Grant. Grant actually argued for it, then against me. Thanks, man.
For it in GBPs, against it in cash.
Well, yeah, but I don't play cash, so.
I know. That's why I disagreed with you.
Okay, let's move on to running back. So the first guy who stood out to me is Jordan Howard at 3,700. So I have a true story. I am in 4 season-long leagues, and last week after watching the Bears game, I went and picked up Jordan Howard in 3 of my leagues, and in the one league where he wasn't available, I tried to trade for him because he looked that much better than Jeremy Langford. Langford ended up getting hurt this last week, so Howard is going to take over the lead back role for the next few weeks by default, but I think he's going to run away with it. He's 3,700 against Detroit. In that same game, Dwayne Washington, if we want to think he's going to get 14 to 16 carries, is 3,800. Carlos Hyde, honestly, getting way behind almost helps Hyde because 49ers will just keep running the ball even when the opponent is in prevent defense. He probably won't be way behind against Dallas. Dallas started out as an even line, and Dallas has already been bet up to like 3-point favorites, but still Carlos Hyde at 4,200. He's going to get 20 carries. Dallas does not have a great run defense. And then the next guy really doesn't fit under like super cheap, but LeGarrette Blount at 5K against Buffalo is still interesting without Tom Brady there and with the Patriots probably giving him the ball 20 to 25 times. So Grant, I'm going to throw it over to you. Any running backs I missed? Anybody else who stood out to you?
No, I mean, you hit it. Carlos Hyde is one of my favorite plays this week by leaps and bounds. But if you want to go cheap, I don't know what's considered cheap anymore. And I guess whoever plays running back for the Chicago Bears, I don't know how good he is, and I don't care because he's not Langford. But him, and then Cleveland's a 6.5-point dog. If they get behind early against Washington, it could be a good Duke Johnson game.
Yeah.
And then Jeremy Hill, he's consistently just so low owned, and we saw what he could do last week. It remains to be seen what his ownership percentage will actually be this week. But he has a pretty high ceiling just because he can get all the touchdowns against a Miami defense that is beyond horrible against the run.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because if they have the lead, it's going to be Hill probably, and we can expect them to have a lead. So that's definitely interesting. Yeah. Bobby, anybody else at running back?
I mean, if you're playing the Thursday games, I'm all over Jeremy Hill. He's my favorite play. I loved Gio Bernard a couple weeks ago. It's just that team is all situational. They're pretty predictable. I think Crowell actually makes a really good play this week. He's going to go way under the radar. He'll be very low owned. He's 4,400 on DraftKings. He's getting plenty of carries. The fact that he just doesn't, if he happens to go over 100 yards and break a 20-yard rush off last week, he has a monster week. It's just his 3 weeks have been awesome. He's way underpriced for what his actual performance is and how much they're using him. I understand if they get behind, they're more likely to use Duke Johnson more, but I don't think we should just assume they're going to play from behind. They're not as bad as people think, and Washington is pretty bad. I also think, like I mentioned earlier, if somehow the Bears actually do get a lead, Theo Riddick is an awesome play, but it's if they get a lead. My favorite play this week, just at first glance, is DeMarco Murray. I think people will stay off of it against Houston's defense because it's a terrific defense in general. I think terrific defenses force you to do things, and on PPR sites, a lot of that comes down to checkdowns. And DeMarco Murray he had going into week 4, I don't know what he has right now, he had the most targets inside the red zone. He has, out of his 19 targets on the year, he has 17 receptions. He has 150 yards receiving. He's running the ball. I mean, he's run the ball 13, 12, and 16 times in their first 3 games. He is a guy who hasn't had that giant game, but is having phenomenal games every week. And I don't think people will be on him against Houston. So he's a guy who stands out to me. All
right. Wide receiver position. The cheapest guy I could find who's even remotely viable is Cole Beasley at 3,900. Cole Beasley is obviously a strong cash game play with his usage. His upside is a little lower. Same thing with Jamison Crowder, who Grant brought up last week, and he had a big game. Jamison Crowder, 4.2K. He doesn't typically have the big play upside, although they might use him a little more in that way if Deshaun Jackson is out this next week. But Crowder against Cleveland. And then obviously Terrell Pryor at 4.3K. Tyrell Williams against New Orleans at 4.4K. Has 15 targets the last 2 weeks. And Steve Smith Sr., who you guys love, 4.5K against Oakland. So, Grant, I'm going to throw it to you again. Anybody I missed at wide receiver? Anybody on that list you like?
You've got Terrell Pryor at 4,300, I think.
No, he said
Or I was
Terrell Pryor.
Oh, all right. Sorry, I meant Terrell Williams at 4,400.
I had him there
He
too.
said him too.
Wrong Terrell. Okay, I was not paying attention. My guys that I'm about to say.
What, did you have your
Adam
head in the
Hum-
refrigerator?
It's a loud refrigerator. I put the microphone on mute for a minute. Adam Humphries for Tampa Bay. I've got to look into this more throughout the week, but he's 3K right now. He has 27 targets on the year, and he had 13 this last week.
Also, have you watched him? Have you watched this guy? He looks like he's.
I watched him a little bit.
He looks like a fucking Sorry, I said it again by
That's
accident.
two. That's two.
He looks like a monster version of when Reggie Bush was in college. He looks like he's ready to kill everyone every time he gets the ball. I really like watching him play. Sorry, wanted to add on to that. Sorry about the F-bomb.
I mean, I'm just happy you agree with me. This must feel like to have approval from your family. Wow.
It was the first time I agreed with you tonight.
Yeah, I know. It's the first time in ever. Marquise Goodwin, he is getting a few targets a game. He's just not doing anything with them. This dude's got speed, and Taylor's got an arm. If he accidentally gets 2 catches like he did 2 weeks ago, he could go off hugely for only 3K. Inman, he's in San Diego. It's against New Orleans. Anything can happen. And it's against New Orleans. Enough said. Kevin White, 15 targets last week or this week. And Kenny Stills it's on the Thursday night game, so irrelevant. Never mind. So those guys. And we said Crowder. Pierre Garçon got 8 targets this week. He's 4K. And we know Garçon has speed and can go off. So they're all great GBB plays.
All right, Bobby, anybody else at wide receiver?
Yeah, I first of all, we didn't mention the Baltimore Oakland game. That's a really interesting game to target too, if somebody else wants to target for a game for GBPs. I think that Tavon Austin is the biggest sleeper. He'll be less than probably 1% owned against Arizona's defense. They try to find ways to get him involved every game. He's always a huge play threat. I would say he's obviously not a cash game play, but an awesome GPP play at 4K. Because he literally has 30-point upside on DraftKings with the way they try to use him. And Arizona is a crazy good defense that can get a little bit sloppy when it comes to guarding the slot a little bit. Maybe part of that is because that the Honey Badger was hurt last year. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But I just think that he's an interesting play at 4K that nobody's going to be on. I love Tyrell Williams. I love Pryor. The one other guy who I thought who was worth paying up for, and I just thought was worth mentioning, is Alshon Jeffrey. In that kind of a game, trying to come back where you're going to be that low owned, Alshon Jeffrey is a top 7 receiver in the NFL, maybe even higher. He hasn't had anybody throwing him the ball. It's a great spot for him to get a 13, 14 target game where he has a chance to go off for 30 to 40 fantasy points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Side note, guys, I have 20 shares of Alshon Jeffrey. Literal physical traded on the stock market shares because apparently they are actually doing that now, and I bought it a year ago, and his price is going up, guys.
Okay.
I love
Tight end is our last spot, and there's obviously always going to be value here. You could pay up for Greg Olsen against Atlanta. You could pay up for Jordan Reed against Cleveland. They should be lower owned because of how much value there is. But speaking of the value, Hunter Henry stepped into Antonio Gates' role last week and looked really good. He's playing New Orleans, which is one of the best tight end matchups. Kobe Fleener dropped a 7-catch, 109-yard, 1-touchdown performance this week against Atlanta. He continued to look awful. He continued to look like he genuinely didn't care if he caught the ball or not when it came his way. He failed to catch a lot of contested throws, but that's pretty ridiculous usage. San Diego funnels targets toward the middle of the field, which could help him again. And then Grant's favorite game, we got Eric Ebron at Chicago. Ebron has 7 and 8 targets his last 2 games. He cost 3.7K. Dennis Pitta against Oakland, 20 targets over the last 2 weeks, under 4K. Jimmy Graham at the Jets, 4K. Somebody asked me about Jimmy Graham early last week, and I said something to the effect of, I could see it working out, but I don't see the need to take that risk. And then as I got later in the week, I started realizing, man, he's a better play than I thought. But because I'd taken that strong stand, I was like, well, I can't go to him now. So that was dumb of me. I missed out on a big game from Jimmy Graham as a result. So, Bobby, anybody that I missed, anybody else that stands out to you at tight end?
You actually took every single person from my list, so I'm kind of annoyed.
I'm good at that at these low-priced ones.
You are, but there is one guy you forgot about. It could be a big week for Jason Witten, depending on how that game flows. I don't generally like taking people against or for the Cowboys, except for maybe Elliott. I think that they lean on him a lot. The targets are there. It's just a matter of if Dallas gets behind by multiple scores early, Witten's a wonderful GPP play. I thought you were right about Hunter Henry. My favorite play of the weeks are really simple. Pitta is awesome. I also thought you forgot about Gary Barnidge. I think he's another play that's a really, really good play at an affordable 3,600 against what I think is still a very weak Washington secondary. Even though they're decent out in the corners, they're not great over the middle. I think Barnidge is a reasonable play. And Fleener is the number one play of the week. And Cammy is fine play as well. There's too much value.
Grant, what about you? Tight end.
You took a lot of mine, but luckily I'm pretty sure I'm the tight end whisperer, so I've got tons more. So Cameron Brate, ASJ is gone, and I loved that guy. So now whoever steps into his
how many catches is he going to have? How many yards is he going to have?
How many targets did he have this week?
No, you say how many did he have?
He had like 7, didn't he?
Did he have that many?
10.
Yeah, and he's from Harvard.
You know
and
what?
He's got 5 red zone targets this year.
I'm going to silence myself on that note.
And he was 0.16% owned, and he's 2,800, and you've got egg on your face.
Yep. I got owned. I just got owned.
Ryan Griffin, someone you guys might want to look into. 2,600. He had 10 targets this week. I haven't looked into him nearly enough, and I will throughout the course of the week. Delaney Walker doesn't play, then that makes him a great play. Jesse James, always a great pick. Why has no one talked about Kyle Rudolph all season? It's absolutely insane to me. He was 2% owned this week, and in my opinion, he was exactly on the same page as Pitta. So as soon as I saw Pitta's ownership after the Thursday night games, I immediately switched almost all my Pitta to Rudolph, and I was right.
I can attest to that because you did send me your highest stakes lineups, and Kyle Rudolph was one of the predominant players in there, and I said that was a really good play. I thought that was a really smart play.
Grant, you brought up Rudolph on the show last week as well, so
I was right on all levels. And last guy,
okay.
Don't overdo it. Just you're a winner. We were acknowledging you.
I lost money this week, but
Doyle's getting more looks than Dwayne Allen. He's actually looking more dependable than Dwayne Allen, so that's a good call too. Okay, so we're going to close out the show again a little bit later than we wanted to. We'll get better at this, but last segment we wanted to add was each of us giving a bold call, and we got to figure out how to calculate who was the most wrong on their bold call. So the three of us can convene via text message this week to figure that out. But whoever is the most wrong on their bold call is going to have to send out an embarrassing tweet without giving any explanation as to why that tweet was posted. So Grant, what were some of the examples that you gave of tweets we could be posting?
I can't even remember what they are, but I think it was somewhere along the lines of.
Go ahead.
Silence. One of them was along the line of, man, I love to sing in the shower to Taylor Swift. I wish I had a body like Mariah Carey. If I could look like anyone, it would be Danny DeVito, and that wouldn't even be a lie for me. I can't remember.
Nickelback is the greatest band of all time. Not even
that would be. Is that what that one?
If Nickelback's the greatest band of all time, and if you disagree, then cut your ears off.
That's brutal.
So we'll have to. So keep an eye.
I'll cut my ears off.
Keep an eye out next Monday. Loser is going to have to post this. You can help us out by or help out the person who has to post it by retweeting and embarrassing them further. So,
And also, they are not allowed to say anything about it. No response to any retweet, no liking any retweet, nothing, and we will provoke them.
Yep, nothing. And so then people have to, I guess, tune into the show to find out why we tweeted that. I'm regretting this already. So I would like to make a motion to have Bobby's bold call be Jameis Winston as one of the top quarterback plays.
Can I not? Because I think Jameis Winston is like a great sneaky quarterback play, but I have a better play who's going to be lower owned. Okay,
well then is it going to be a bold call? What's your bold call?
Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is the most overlooked receiver in the NFL. I have no idea why this is not like on my FanDuel lineups. I think he was 2% drafted. He plays in that New Orleans offense also. I know no Willie Snead and all that. That actually makes it better. He's 3,800. They're playing at San Diego. His ownership is going to go up because of the Willie Snead, whatever his situation is, just to even him being hampered, or if he's out, obviously. Michael Thomas is maybe a top 10 receiver this week, maybe a top 5 receiver.
Book it. Top 10 or top 5 receiver. Grant, what's your bold call?
I'm going to make this easily quantifiable with a guy that's cheaper than Michael Thomas. Kevin White will outplay Michael Thomas. Done.
I like. Oh, nice, Grant. Fine, we can put a little side action on that one.
Yeah, so I like that too, because then hopefully that takes me out of the running for being the most wrong, since you guys have a head-to-head on that one. I am going to go against what Bobby said earlier regarding Coby Fleener, and I'm going to say there will be at least 3 tight ends under 4K who outscore Fleener this week.
Ooh, I like
Fleener's 3.2K. I think there will be at least 3 tight ends under 4K who outscore Fleener. And Jimmy Graham is 4K, so he does not count. So I'm talking under 4K.
I really like that. But can I add one thing? That I'm playing all 3 of those players on my DraftKings lineups. So I'm playing
Fleener and White and Michael Thomas.
I'm playing Fleener, White, and Thomas. And then that's why I can spend up at running back. I'm great everywhere else. I can take Cam Newton.
Spend up at quarterback. Yep.
Exactly.
Okay, so thanks for hanging out with us tonight, guys. By guys, I mean listeners, because it sounded like I was speaking to a broad audience, not to my 2 buddies with whom I am on air. So really quickly, Grant, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I'm terrible at picking quarterbacks, so don't listen to that. But everything else is just fantastic that I do. And also, the Pizza Hut grilled cheese crust pizza has literally changed my life in so many ways, good and bad, in the last 3 hours that I cannot even explain it.
Good and bad seems about accurate. All right, Bobby, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, ready to turn around the start to the NFL season. I always feel like week 3, 4 becomes a lot easier. And I really feel like targeting the one sleeper game this week that people may not be on is that Baltimore-Oakland game. Might be a good game to target. That's where I'll leave it.
All right, Grant, Bobby, thanks for hanging out tonight. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. Again, let us know on Twitter. Grant is gnefer07 and Bobby is Bobby Phi. I am JM to win. Follow us. Let us know your thoughts on the show, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.